If you're new to the Vectric design software to create your CNC router projects, you're probably feeling a little overwhelmed with how to work with the software. Don't worry, in this video, I've got your back. By the time you're done with this video, you will not only know how to work with the Vectric software, you will have this exact welcome sign designed up and ready to carve on your CNC router. I'm Garrett Fromme, CEO of IDC Woodcraft. IDC Woodcraft is a premium CNC router bit supply company for CNC creators like you. In this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to confidently design your CNC router projects in the Vectric software. Let's get into the Vectric software right from the beginning and get you up to speed so that you can design your CNC projects with confidence in Vectric. Let's go. IDCWoodcraft.com. The way this video is going to go is I am going to start right at this screen and explain what you are looking at. Then we're going to get into the software, set a couple things up, and then I'm going to explain the layout of the screen, and then we're going to start diving into the tools you'll need to know. Then we get to start designing, do toolpaths, and generate the G-code that will make your CNC project. In case you want to move ahead, there are timestamps down below in the description of the video, as well as lots of other links, but I will tell you about those links later on. With that, let's start learning about Vectric. When you open your Vectric software up, this is the first screen you're going to see. And the only difference that will be here is what may be right here. I have Vectric Vcarve Pro. If you have the desktop version, it'll say Vcarve Desktop or Cut2D Pro, Cut2D Desktop, or Aspire. And it'll also say in the very upper left-hand corner what you have, Vcarve Pro. And it'll also tell you the version number. So I am working with version 12. You'll see a couple numbers after that, which means that there is a patch. So I will talk to you a little bit about the patch in just a minute. Next to that, it tells you who the software is licensed to. Just below that are your standard menu items that you generally see in most software. File, edit, and then for Vectric, there's machine, toolpaths, gadgets, and then there's always a help button. To the very upper right corner, currently it has my name, and when you see your name in the upper right corner, that means you are logged into the Vectric portal. If not, it'll say sign in, and you click those words, sign in, and it'll take you to the Vectric portal, and you sign in with the email that you signed up with the Vectric over. It may also say new updates available. If that's the case, then you will eventually need to update your software. Don't do that now. At the end of this video, go to the description and there will be a video you can watch that shows you exactly how to update your software. I just want you to know that that's there. And of course it has your standard close button, maximize, and minimize buttons right there. Over to the left are your opening menus. Now, you won't worry about anything below video tutorials. I never have ever used these buttons. What you will use are the two major menu buttons up on top. You have status tasks or startup tasks, and then recently opened files. So recently opened files shows the last 4 files that you opened up. For example, we have Marble Maze design. When I select that, it's the last project I've worked on, and there it is. There's the design, and this is a file and a design that I created very deep dive videos on to teach you how to work with this. I will link those videos down below. It teaches you how to design something like this and how to generate the toolpaths and also how to set it up in your machine. So we are going to ignore that. So I'm going to go back to where we were, the opening screen, which is right here. So those are the recently opened files. What you're going to work with most is create a new file or open an existing file or the recently opened files. But since you're so new, we're going to create a new file. When you do that, the screen is going to look like this. So I'm going to first just set something up for you, and I want you to follow exactly what I am doing, and then I will talk to you about the screen real estate so that you know what you're looking at. When we get into this, you're going to see this menu pop up where it says Job Setup. The Job Setup is the material size that you are working with. For example, if I have a board that's 16 inches wide by 24 inches tall, then this is where I set that up at. The first thing you want to do is set up your single-sided job. You don't want to go to these guys here, double-sided, or if you have rotary, you don't want to click rotary, especially since you're so new to it. Now we got to the job setup, and this is where you put in your material size. So we're simply going to use 12 by 12, and the material thickness is 0.75. You want to be sure to set your inch or millimeters, whatever you prefer to work in. For Z0 position, this is where we're telling the software whether we're going to be setting our Z0 or our up and down based off the top of the material or based off the bottom of the material. I want yours to be set at material surface. And I got this little graphic here that shows that it is set off the material surface with that little red box. So if we set it to machine bed, which is something you will do quite a bit, then when you click that, you see that little box move. But you want to be on material surface. And then down below is your XY datum position. This is going to be the zero start point for the side to side and the up and down movement, or the X and Y reference. You're going to see these got these little radio buttons and this little checkbox right here. Make sure you are not checked here, and you want to make sure that you have your radio button selected on the middle. What a radio button is it can only be you can only have one selected. It's like a radio station. For example, if I click this lower left corner, this one will go away and this one will be selected just like that. Now you notice right next to it is a little graphic too, and there's this little red ball, and that is showing that we are set up on the lower left corner of the project to start our project out. In other words, that's our 0, 0 point, or X and Y 0. One of the other things that you'll notice while you're setting this up is out in the main design area, there's going to be a little red dot. That is going to represent the same thing that you were selecting in that box. And when you change that location, you'll see the little red dot move. So I'm going to set that to the XY datum position at 0, and the little red dot move to the middle. And we have our two axis lines, our x-axis and our y-axis, that is showing up as well. Don't worry about the two buttons down here. You can get to that a little bit later in other videos as you start to get more familiar with the software. Then click OK. Now we come to the main screen where you will start doing your design work. This screen that you're looking at right now with all these icons over here is where the rubber meets the road, where you design your projects. But with all these buttons going on over here, that can be really overwhelming. Don't worry, I got you covered. We're going to cover just the basic essentials that you need to know to create basic projects as we start to work into a project. Of course, I've got to tell you what you're looking at all through here. But before I do that, we got to do one more quick setup so that your Vectric software looks like my Vectric software. If you notice up here under File Operations, I have 8 icons. You probably only have these 4 right here and not these 4 here. This is open a new file, save the file that you have, undo what you've done, and redo what you've done. But these are used quite a bit, but they do not exist in yours at the moment, probably. If not, let's just simply go up to this little edit button right here, select that, go all the way down to the bottom, go to Options, select that, and this window is going to open up. Scroll down until you see General Settings. When you come down to Show Additional File Operations, yours will say no. Simply click in that field and then come over and click the drop down arrow, change it to yes, and click OK. And these 4 icons will pop up and they will stay there. We've worked through the opening screen and the job setup screen, and we will get back into the job setup screen because you do need to know how to set that up. And we have also configured your Vectric software so yours looks like mine. Now it is time to explain to you all the real estate that you are looking at on the screen right now so that it is not so overwhelming and you understand what is what and why it's where it's at. I promise you, in a couple of minutes, this is going to feel a lot less intimidating. Let's go. IDCWoodcraft.com. We're going to start off with the big area right here. This is what we call the design area, and it's got this white square box in it. That box is the job that we just set up, 12 inches wide by 12 inches tall. And all your designs need to be within that box. If they go outside the white box, then your machine will carve off the material, and that's not what we want. At the top of the design area and to the left is a scale, and that is simply a reference tool that shows you basically the size of the material that you are working with. In the upper left-hand corner, there are some icons which we will not work with in this video, and to the upper right, there are some zoom icons, which I'll show you a little bit about that. But one of the things I do want to point out is you want to make sure that you are working with a mouse while you're working with your design software. If you don't have a mouse, you are going to have a very hard time working with the software. All design software requires a mouse. I will link the mouse I use down below in the description, along with other things that I have linked down below. Over to the left are all your design icons. This is where you actually designate what is going to be happening while you do your design work. At the very left are some tabs. These tabs will say different things: design, sheets, layers, and so on. You want to make sure that yours always says design, and you will know if you're working in the design area with the design tools, as you see with the icons, when it says design right up here. At the very top, there are some drop-down menu selections that you will typically find in software. There's this little arrow button right here that toggles you between your design tools and your toolpath tools. Next to that is your 2D view and 3D view tabs. When you select one of these, you will see a different view. The 2D view is where you do your design work, and that is what we're looking at right now. The 3D view tab will switch you over to the toolpath rendering view, or the 3D view, which we will get into a little bit later. Next to that are your tiling view buttons. This will enable you to see both the 2D view and the 3D view screens at the same time. This button lets you see over and under. So your design screen is on top, your 3D rendering is on the bottom. If you select the button next to that, that'll align vertically. You'll see your design to the left and your 3D view to the right. If you get this and you want to maximize one of these screens, simply come up and select this little button right here. That's the maximize button. Next, you see 3 tabs. You have sheets, layers, and level. Now, if you have Cut2D, you will not see level. In this video, we won't work with sheets. We will not work with levels. We may work with layer. All the way over to the right, you see 3 icons. These are your snap icons right here, and this is your grid icon. It turns a grid on and off in your screen, as you see right here. You want to make sure these 2 are showing this blue color or turned on. You know they're turned off if they are gray like that, so you want to turn that on. All the way over to the right, it says Toolpaths, a little tab. When you hover over that tab, the Toolpath menu will pop out. We will cover this one a little bit later and cover only the tools that you will need to know to get started. Down at the bottom, there's a little X and Y coordinate. That's just showing you the coordinate position of your mouse. And over to the left at the bottom, it shows you your job material size. So we have the 12-inch wide by 12-inch tall by 3/4 of an inch thick. So that's the layout of the screen. Now, there's one more thing you need to do before we start diving into the designing, and that is saving your project. If you notice right up at the very top, it says new. That means we are working with a file that is not saved. And one of the things with the Vectric software is it does not have an autosave feature. So we have to remember to save on a regular basis. The unfortunate part about that is if you're working on a design and your computer dies and the program shuts down, or the Windows does a update where it has to shut everything down and you haven't saved your project, you have lost it. There's no way to recover it. So saving is a critical thing that we want to remember. And once we save it, then this name up here will change. So before you even start anything, the first thing we're going to do is save. There's a couple ways you can save. One is you can go up to this icon right here, the little floppy disk. I don't know why they use floppy disks anymore. These things are antiquated and not used. Or you can go up to the File drop down and click Save. Or you can hit Control S on your keyboard. So I'm going to hold the Control button down and hit S. And since it hasn't saved anything, it's ready to save. And so now I am going to give this a file name. But first I'm going to put it in the directory. It's really good to organize yourself. And I'd like to create a directory called CNC Designs. That's where I'm going to go. I'm going to create a folder. And this folder is going to be named Vectric 101 Training Video Project, and hit enter, and then go into that, and then we're going to name it the same thing, Vectric 101 Training Project, and save that. And now you see at the very top it says Vectric 101 Training Project. Now on a regular basis you want to make sure that you either hit the save button under File Operations or Control S. You want to just get in the habit of this. Unfortunately, you have to remember it. There's nothing here to remind you, and Vectric does not autosave. I can't emphasize this enough. I told you would feel a lot better about the Vectric software in the last couple of minutes, and you do, because you understand the lay of the land and you understand the gist of how deep this video is going to go for you in order to get you up to speed with the Vectric software. Now it's time to go a little bit deeper. You see everything that's showing up over there inside that red box? Those are all the design tools that you are going to be working with to create your project. You don't need to know them all, but I do need to give you an overview of what you're looking at, and then we will dive into the ones that you have to know. One thing I want to point out, I'm going to be bringing up something about these design tools in a little bit that is super, super important for you to understand. It's when I start talking about closed vectors and open vectors. Critical. So make sure you perk up during this section because it's really important. Okay, let's get into the overview of the design tools that you're looking at to the left of me. IDCWoodcraft.com. At the very top, we have File Operations. Now, we added these icons before, but I'm going to cover what they do. This icon creates a new file. The one next to it, you're going to press it all the time. That is save the project. Remember, Vectric does not autosave, so you want to get in the habit of saving that. These two buttons, this one undoes what you have done, and you can hit that multiple times and you'll keep undoing. And then this one will redo what you undid. Down below, you have the set job dimensions. This is your job setup. That's the screen that we opened up to. I'm going to select that quickly, and you can see it says job setup. This is where we set our job type or job dimensions, where our Z position is or XY position is, and so on. We're just going to cancel that. Here is where you open an existing file. And then this is a button that you'll use quite a bit through your designing. This is where you bring in a bitmap or an image, and then you can trace around that image and then carve things on it. It's a very cool and useful tool. The final one is where you import 3D components. Now, if you have Cut2D, this icon will not be there. We're not going to get into this one today at all because that gets a little more advanced, and I've got other videos for 3D models and how to work with them. In fact, I have a video list that has all the videos I've created on the channel, and I will link that down below in the description of this video. The next section, Create Vectors. This is the most important section of all because this is where all your carved lines are going to be made from. This is where you actually draw. You have the closed objects, circle, oval, square, polygon, star. Then we have our open vectors, which is lines, arcs, freehand, and a couple other things, and then your text and trace bitmap function. We'll get back to this because this is quite important. Down below that you have transform objects. This is where you can move, resize, rotate, and mirror objects and do a couple of other things. We'll get into one or two of those buttons, and then below that we start to get into a little more advanced stuff, edit objects. We are not going to cover the majority of these here, but we will cover a couple. But the one that we'll use a lot and you will be using all the time is this little scissors here. It's the trim function. Down below here is the offset and layout. This is where we do other advanced work. And finally, at the bottom, 3D modeling tools. If you have Cut2D, you will not have this. If you have the Vectric Aspire, then you will have a few more icons down here. So that is the layout here. We're going to talk a little bit about the Create Vector section, and then we're going to start drawing. Remember I said there is something really important that you need to understand when it comes to designing? We're getting into that right now. I need you to understand this aspect here. This is vitally, vitally important when you're doing projects. But this first row here, you notice these are shapes. We have the circle, oval, rectangle, polygon, and star. These are what we call closed vectors. Now, what a closed vector is, I'm just going to draw a circle real quick so I can demonstrate, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle and demonstrate what a closed vector is. Let me fix that. There we go. A closed vector is any vector that you can run your finger around and there's technically no end to it. Every line is connected to every other line and it is enclosed. If you're stuck in here, there is no way out because there's no opening. Same thing with a rectangle. You can trace your finger around it endlessly. There is no start or end point. When it comes to an open vector, I'm going to draw a line real quick from there to there. An open vector has a start point and an end point. This distinction is vital for you to understand. Just know that a closed vector has no endpoint, and if you're stuck inside the shape, you cannot get out. And that goes for a star, a circle, any kind of shape, even a shape like this. I'm just going to do a quick fix up real quick, and I just do a little trim out, and we have done this. This is considered a closed vector because you can run your finger all the way around it and never come to a start or an end point. Open vectors have a start and an end point. So that distinction I need to make sure that you are clear on. I want to take a minute to explain a little bit deeper about this closed vector and open vector thing so that you understand why it is so important when it comes to creating your CNC projects. As a part of your training in this video, you are going to be carving out this sign. And you are going to be removing all this material around the star and the word welcome and this rectangle here and this border right along here. If you have an open vector, the software will not be able to carve that. I'm going to explain this by using this IDC Woodcraft mug with my name on it. Think of a cup. It has to have a hole in it for you to put your water in, and it has to have a solid boundary around it to contain that water. So if you have an open vector, in other words, a circle like that, that is missing a piece on it, meaning if it's missing something, it's an open vector. It has a start point and it has an end point. There would essentially be a hole in it, and all that water would leak out because that hole technically would be all the way down that cut in the project. And Vectric, when it's cutting a pocket out, which is what that kind of carve is, these recesses that you're going to be doing, these are called pockets. When you're doing a pocket out, the software needs to have a closed vector because it says, I am only cutting the hole in this cup. But if there is a slot there or a missing component or a start point and an end point to that circle, I can't pocket it because it is an open vector. Without knowing the distinction between closed and open vectors, when you're generating toolpaths and the software tells you it can't do that, you're not going to know what to do to correct the problem. And that's why this is so important. If this made sense to you, then take a second and hit that thumbs up button just below the video. My friend, you and I are on a roll and you are learning lots of stuff with this CNC creating process and the Vectric software, and you are going to know a lot more as we move along. So let's keep going. The top level on this Create Vectors is all closed vectors. The second level are all open vectors. Now the final one is just placing a dimension into the design software. We will not work with that. The third one has to do with text. Now, my friend, I'm just going to tell you what icons we are going to be using that you will use all the time. you have your basic shapes, a circle and a rectangle. And you'll also have a line, straight line, and this also creates a curved line, and we have the arc. And then we have the text box. So we're going to work with those 4 icons, or 5 icons: circle, rectangle, straight line, arc, and text. We're going to probably fiddle with this button right here, which is aligning your objects, and then, of course, with the scissors, and we may fiddle with a couple others. But those are the basic tools that you need to know to start making a project. Well, my friend, we have finished the first section of this video where you now understand the opening screens of the Vectric software and the layout or the real estate that you are looking at right now. I hope that you're following along with me as you're doing this, because the only way you're going to get familiar with this stuff is by practice. At this point, it is now time to get into the meat of what the Vectric software is all about. Designing out amazing projects that you are going to be carving out on your CNC router. This is where the rubber meets the road, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I am literally going to walk you through each item step by step, and I want to make sure that you follow along with me. You may have to watch this video 1 or 2 more times to really get the feel of the flow. Before we move on, I just want to ask you if you are getting something out of this video already, some value, and this is not feeling as intimidating as it might have about 20-ish minutes ago, then take a minute and hit that little thumbs up button down below. You might want to consider subscribing, because this is how I work with all my videos to make sure that you become a good creator with your CNC router and understand the design software that's actually going to make that happen. Now, the project we're going to be working on is this very cool welcome sign. It's got a very unique shape, and it has the word welcome in it. It's got personalization in it with a name, and you can put whatever name you want to in it. This may seem a little intimidating to you, but it actually uses all the basic tools that you will be working with all the time in the software. And it's really not that hard to design up, as you will see. Just follow along with me step by step, and you will have the exact same project. At this point, it is time to start getting into the meat of the Vectric software. After you've designed your CNC router project and set it on your router and start carving, you're committed to the job. There is no room for error. That's why we at IDC Woodcraft design and make our router bits to the highest of standards, because your project has no second chances. We know how much time you spent creating your project and what you expect out of it when the carving is done. At IDC Woodcraft, we know that the router is doing the moving, but the bit is doing the carving. Every cut has to be perfect, because that's what you expect. So that when your project is finished on the carve, it looks exactly the way you imagined it in your mind. Beautiful. It's worthy of you, your family, your friends, for sale. Make beauty from your imagination, and know that your project will come out perfect. IDC Woodcraft CNC router bits, because your CNC projects absolutely must look amazing. idcwoodcraft.com. This is the actual two-dimensional design that we will do in this video, and it comprises of basically 6 elements: the outer boundary, the inner boundary, the star, the welcome, the rectangle around the word Smiths, and then the word Smiths. Now, when it comes to this sign, it works with basic shapes. We have essentially a rectangle, a circle on it, some straight lines, and we're working with arcs. And I'm going to show you 1 or 2 other tools that you will want to work with in your design software that you use pretty regularly as well. You'll be surprised how quick and easy it is to design this kind of stuff. So let's start off with the design of this sign. Let's have some fun. We're going to go back to what we were working with before. This is the Vectric 101 training project that we started with, and if you have been following me, this is exactly what your screen looks like. You've got this 12 by 12 rectangle in the middle of your design area. The welcome sign is coming off a piece of material that is 24 inches wide by 16 inches tall. It's material, some pine, glued up pine that I get from Lowe's, very inexpensive, and it's good practice material. But we have to change the size of this to 24 by 16. So what you want to do is come up to File Operations, to this button right here that says Set Job Dimensions and Origin. Select that, and we'll do our setup. First of all, this is going to be a single-sided job. Have this button selected. Next, we go into the width. We're going to make that 24. And you'll notice as we start to change these numbers, the white shape is going to change out in the design area. It has just expanded to 24 inches wide. The height is going to be 16, and the thickness will be 0.75. Your Z0 position will be on the material surface, and your XY datum will be in the middle right there. Don't worry about anything else here. Make sure this is not checked right here. You don't need that checked. And select OK. And now we get to start off with our design. So let's take a look at our design. Remember, we start off with basic shapes. And the basic shape of this is a rectangle. So that's what we're going to start with, and we're going to make the rectangle right around the word welcome and Smiths with these radiuses in them. And you are ready to go, my friend. You're going to be surprised how quick and easy this is. Now, I said we're going to start right off with a rectangle. So we want to come up to Create Vectors and go to Draw Rectangle. Open it up. Be sure to set your anchor point to the center right here. We just want to come down and make sure our corner type is set to radius internal, and set your radius to 1. Before we move on to draw your first rectangle, I do want to explain to you what this corner type is, because this is a basic function in the Vectric software and in the draw rectangle function that you will use all the time. So first of all, you see that there are 3 radio buttons here. One next to square, radius external, and radius internal. And then there's a little edit box there to set a radius. You'll also notice that there is a little graphic right here. And right now that graphic is a line with this arc on it, and then it goes down. This is actually the corner of what the corner of the rectangle is going to look like when we create it. And that's because we have it selected on radius internal. So all 4 corners will look like this. Whereas radius external will make it a rounded corner just like that. And of course, if you check square, it'll just be a square corner. So I'm going to demonstrate this real quick because, like I said, this is a basic function you'll use a lot. So while we have square corner selected, and that graphic shows us that we are creating a square cornered rectangle, I'm going to come out to the drawing area and simply click my left mouse button once, and now we have this rectangle with 4 square corners. If we come back into that and click radius external, you see that this little graphic changes, and we have set a radius of 1. And if you look at the image, there are green dots in all 4 corners. That means that we are now editing the corners of this rectangle. When I click the apply button, it's going to have rounded corners on the rectangle. Now let's take a look at the radius internal. I'm going to select radius internal. The graphic changes. We are still set to a radius of 1, and now I'm going to apply that setting, and you'll see that the rectangle will now have internal radiuses. So that is the corner type function that we are working with. Now we're going to get rid of this rectangle, and the way you delete things off the drawing is while it's selected, which is this purple dashed line or even a solid line. As long as it's selected, you can simply click Control Z, and that will undo the last thing you did. Then Control Z again, and one more time, and there we are. So now we're going to come back to the corner type, select radius internal, and make sure the radius is set to 1. Now we have to set up the width and the height of the rectangle. So the width on this is going to be 22, and the height will be 10. And then with that, simply come out here, and before we actually create the rectangle, I just want you to take a look at my cursor for a moment. You see there's a plus sign, a rectangle on it, and some coordinates. The plus sign is the center of your cursor. That's the actual pick point that you are working with. The rectangle over top of it is just a symbol that tells us that we are in the draw rectangle mode. So you will see a circle on it when we're drawing a circle, or an arc when we're drawing an arc. Basically, it's just a little thing that tells you what you're doing right now. And then, of course, you'll have some information below that. In this case, we have the XY coordinates. Now, the next thing I want to show you is, as you watch my little plus sign on my cursor, when I come close to this axis line, it changes to a target. And if you look at the X coordinate, it says 0.0. And what that is telling us, when that cursor changed, it means that it is now snapping to the vertical line. And you can even see the vertical line has dashed momentarily. If I pull away, the vertical line is a quiet gray solid. But when I come close to it, it is dashed. What this cursor change is telling me with the number below it is that when I create this rectangle, it is going to start right at the center line of the project, and it's doing that because our snaps are turned on. That's all the way up here. Remember, we talked about this. We want these two buttons turned on. The one other thing I want you to do is over here, I want you to set the anchor point to the middle. So now we're going to come over, we're going to let it snap somewhere just below here and click once with the mouse. Just one quick click, and there is our rectangle. Now we're going to close that. We're done with the rectangle. Now you see the rectangle is highlighted. It's very close to the edge of the material, so we're going to move that up just a little bit. If you take a look at the project here, we've got quite a bit of space here. We want to leave enough space so when this project cuts out that there's enough supporting material on the waste material. So I'm just going to use my arrow keys to nudge it up just a little bit. Now, the next thing we want to do is to get this little taper on the welcome sign. We got the taper coming up this way. It's a straight line. Then we have a taper coming back down this way. So we're going to come back into the design, and we're going to come into create vectors, and you're going to go to draw a line or a polyline. Select that. Now there's something I want you to notice about this polyline right now. You see the little indicator above my cursor. It is actually not a straight line. It's kind of a swirl line or an S line. That is telling me that we are currently in the draw curve mode within the line function. So what you need to do is press the letter S if you see it like that, and that should change to a straight line just like that. So the letter S will switch us from a Bezier curve type of curve. I'll show you what that looks like. We're just going to go like that, and it creates a curve that looks like that. And we don't want that. So if you ever get that, that's why. I'm going to hit delete and go back into line mode, and we can look at our cursor. I'm going to click the letter S again, and now we're in line, and we want to come down and just hover over the corner of this rectangle, and you're going to notice my cursor is changing. It creates a dashed line that's going up and down. That means that as we hover over some point, Vectric is going to pick that up and think that we want to use it as a reference. So it's going to use it as a reference that way. It'll use it as a reference that way. And you see the cursor is this little circle with a line going currently horizontal. If it's over here, it's going vertical. When we hover right over it, it turns into a square target. That means we can start and go anywhere we want. Click your left mouse button once, and we're just going to come up with a slight taper just like that, and we want that to snap to the horizontal vertical line right there. Just up like that, just a little bit. And now we've got that. We're going to come back down to here, and now we've got that. Now we can just hit the space bar to get out of that. Now you see the cursor, we are still in line mode because I want to show you something. This may happen to you. We're going to click to create a line, and I click again, and then if I accidentally hold that left mouse button down a little bit, it starts to go into Bezier curve mode, and that can mess you up a little bit, and then it goes back to straight lines. So you want to make sure you don't hold the mouse button down when you're moving on the straight lines. So now we've got that taper, and we need to get rid of this straight line here, and this is where we use the trim tool under edit objects. Select those scissors and make sure this checkbox is checked right here. That will make sure that we maintain this as a closed vector, this rectangle that we are now changing the shape of. That'll make sure that this line that we just drew joins up with the bottom of the rectangle when we get this chopped out. So we're going to chop that out now. I'm going to hit the escape button to get out of the cut mode or trim mode, and we're just going to select that. Now we have selected that, and the whole thing is selected. That means it is a closed vector. This is cool. Now we want to get to this little radius right up here, and we're going to do that with a circle. So we're going to come in to create vectors, select draw circle, and again hover somewhere in the middle between the intersection point of this line and the intersection of the axes. And you may see some interesting cursor stuff going on. You can see there's a little letter S popping up. And I don't know, I've never seen that before, so I'm not sure what that is. But we want it to be that target like that. And we're simply going to drag up to about this point. We don't want to lose all our excess material up here. So we're just going to leave about an inch there and let that go. Close that, go back to your trim tool, and in between the circle, we want to trim out those lines and then come out and get rid of the rest of the circle and close that. And there, my friend, is the basic shape of this welcome sign. Well, we just finished the entire outer shape of this welcome sign, and do you realize that only took 7 minutes? And that was during training. Just think about how fast this is going to be when you get good with this software. It's got to feel pretty good to be able to come up with a unique shape that quick. It just takes a little creative thinking. Now we're going to get to the inner border of that sign, so you have the raised outer outline of it. By using a tool I didn't really introduce to you before, but it's something you'll use once in a while as well. So let's get on to that one. Now we need to create the border before we go on and put the words in, because that border is material that's not being cut away, and we need to make sure that we need to stay inside that border. So we're going to use something called an offset command, something that you will use fairly often. I want to select this boundary we just created, and this is a closed vector. I'm going to come down to offset and layout and select this first one. It has the blue square and the red square in it. This is offset selected vectors. In here, we want to click this inside left. What this is going to do is duplicate this line inside so it creates the border that complements the outside border. And we're going to do that at 1/2 inch inside of this current line. So you come to this distance and make that 0.5. You want to check this one, create sharp corners, and then also select new. It doesn't matter if that's checked, but you do not want this checked, delete original. And simply click the offset button, and when I do, we'll have the inside of the border. It was that quick that we've created this entire cool shape. We're going to close that, and now we get to the words. We're going to type in the 2 words. It's going to be welcome and Smiths, and you see these are 2 different fonts. They are 2 different sizes as well. We're going to show you how to do all that, and then we'll create this rectangle and the star. To come up with the fonts, you go to the big letter A, and at the top you want this radio button selected. That's text, not this one right here. In this box we're going to type in the word welcome. And not going to worry about what's popping up over here, but I do want to show you something real quick in here. I'm going to undo that. And when we go into text, you're just going to see this text box right here. And there's going to be a letter T next to my cursor. And you see this little dot is on the middle of this text box that is starting for me. That's telling me we are center justified. Now you will probably be set like this or like that. That's right justified, that's left justified. And you want to set the center justified. The reason is while I'm in left justified, when I start typing, it runs off to the right of the screen. If I go to right justified and start typing, it runs off to the left. What I want this to do is be center justified and split evenly, just like that. And that's why that's the way I like to work with it. So we're going to type in the word welcome. And now we'll set our font style. Your software uses the fonts that are in your computer. For example, if you use Microsoft Word, then all the fonts that are there for Microsoft Word will be here. If you want to get other fonts, I've got a video that explains to you how to get fonts. That will be on that free video list that I make available to you. There's a download link down in the description of the video. Be sure to get that. To change your font, you come to this little font list right here and click this little down button here, and we are going to go to Arial. And I want it to be bold. So I'm going to select bold, and you can have it italicized if you want. Now you notice down here we have text height. You can change the text height by changing that number dynamically. So we're going to change that right now to 2. We'll change it to 3. And you can see the word welcome upsized a bit. I think I want to change it a little bit more, 3.25. We are good with welcome. Now we want to type in the word Smith. So we're just going to click somewhere out in the field, and there we have a new text box. Welcome is deselected. We're going to come into the text box and type Smiths. We want to change the font, so simply come down to this font list and change it to what you want. I'm going to go to New Times New Roman, and the word Smiths is big. I want it to be smaller, so you can change the font size right there to 2.5, and we'll see what happens with that, and click OK. 5 minutes later, and you learned how to do the offset to create that inner boundary and to get text in and change the font and the font sizes. Now we're going to get into something that I haven't talked to you about, but you will be doing all the time, and that is adjusting things around. If you look at the word Smiths and welcome, they're first of all in the wrong place. They're upside down from each other, and they're off center. So I'm going to show you how to align things and how to move things very quickly. This is another tool or tools that you're going to use all the time. Let's keep going. IDCWoodcraft.com. I'm going to show you how to center these things up. First of all, if you want things centered directly to the centered to the project material, you can click the button F9, and that will move your whatever is selected to the center. I'm going to hit Control-Z to undo that. So I want to show you the centering tool. What we want to do is center Smiths to this line right here, this horizontal center axis line. So we're going to go to the Transform Objects area and select this button, Align Selected Objects. Open that up, and we're going to go up to the top. Now, these 3 buttons will align relative to the job material. This one will do the same thing as F9. It will put the word Smiths right on center. I'm going to click it, and you can see Smiths went right to center. Now I'm going to hit Control-Z. I only want Smiths to be centered left and right, so I'm going to click this button right here. If I wanted to be centered to job material up and down, I would click this button right there. But we're going to go left and right, so I'm going to click that right now, and you'll see Smiths will move. We're going to just center welcome up using the same technique. I'm going to click that side-to-side button, and then we're going to close that. Now while welcome is highlighted, the arrow keys on your keyboard will move things up and down. So I'm just pressing the arrow key up and down on my computer, and while welcome is selected. Now the word Smiths, I'm changing to that, and I'm going to bring that down below. Now Smiths is bold. I don't like it. How do I change it? I simply select the word Smiths, go back into the text function, and find that bold checkbox and uncheck it and close it, and now we have Smiths. Another 7 or so minutes and you've learned text and how to center things up. Now I'm going to show you how to create the rectangle around the word Smiths and create an arc at the top of this rectangle. Then we'll get into the star shape. First of all, let's put a rectangle around Smiths. So we're going to go back to Create Vectors and select Rectangle. Now we don't want these to be radiused. We will radius it, but we don't want to use the radius in this time. I'm going to show you a different tool that you will use on occasion. So we're going to go up and click the square radio button, and instead of clicking anything here, we simply come out here and we hold our left mouse button down and drag a rectangle around Smiths, just like that. Click close. The rectangle is off center, so I want to center that up. We're going to come back into Align Selected Objects. Again, while that is selected, select the side to side. You can do it up and down. You can do both all you want. We're closing that. Now I want to put that little arc over the top of Smith's, just like that, and then we're going to radius it. So we're going to come over to Create Vectors, and now you grab the Draw Arc tool. It works very similar to the Line tool, except it just does arcs. Select that and make sure you're selected on through 3 points. Don't select this through a center point because we aren't using a center point. We're just going to use the reference corners of this rectangle. So we're going to bring your cursor down until it turns into that little square target right there. Click your left mouse button once and it will start the arc line. Now you take a look at my cursor and it has an arc over it. That's telling me I'm in the arc function. Come over to the other corner. When your cursor turns into that little target, click, and now you just come in and just create that little arc. Now that arc is getting a little close to welcome. That's okay. I'm going to show you how to resize things. Another thing you're going to do quite a bit. We're done with drawing arc, so I'm going to hit the escape button once. That got us out of arc draw mode. I'm going to hit it twice. That will take us out of these buttons that you saw up there, which I'll explain to you in a minute. And then we're going to escape one more time. Now we need to get rid of this line right here in the rectangle. I'm going to grab the scissors under Edit Objects and simply select that line and remove it. Now we're going to close that. Now we need to put the radiuses on this rectangle. And this is a function you're going to use quite a bit, is the Fillet command. So under Edit Objects, third row down is first icon. It's going to say Fillet when you hover over it. And that's it right there. Select that and you're going to open up into this menu. You want to make sure you're on normal fillet. This is just going to put on a regular radius on a corner. And we want to set our radius to, we'll go to 0.5. That's a good radius. And simply come down and hover over the corner. Now, take a look at my cursor. You see it has that radius thing on it. That's telling us that we are in fillet mode. And the cursor has a plus. Now, as I get close to that corner, you're going to see a little check pop up. That means it sees the corner, and we can now click that corner, and we have now created a radius. If we accidentally click the corner and we don't want that radius, you can hover back over that, and you're going to see the cursor change. Now it's not round, it's got the little corner on it, and there's a little X, and that's telling us we can undo it. If I click it, it'll undo, but you can see it messed up our other arc. Control Z to get back to that, and then go around and click the 4 corners and close that. Now we've got that shape. We've got the rectangle around Smith's, and you know a bit about the arc function now. However, that rectangle is a little bit too tall and a little bit too wide, and it's interfering with the word welcome. That means we need to change the size of that rectangle that is around Smith's. So I get to show you another tool that you will be using all the time in the Vectric software that you see all the time. It's those little dots that pop up around shapes when you select them. Those allow you to manipulate the shapes in various different ways by changing the size of them, rotating them, moving them around. Super, super useful little tools that pop up on these shapes. So let's dive into that little feature of the Vectric software, and then we'll get to the star. Now you've noticed when we've been drawing some things, when we select items and you see these little beads all around the shape. These beads enable you to reshape things and rotate things. So I'm going to draw a new rectangle temporarily out here. I'm going to click close, and we're going to draw a circle as well right there and close that. Now, you notice these beads pop up all the time. These are called handles. And you look at my cursor, and it's got this little dual arrow on it. The arrow going side to side and up and down. And what that's telling me is now I can move this circle around if I so choose. And this center handle, which will show up on the circle, it'll show up on the rectangle. I'm going to draw a line, just like that, and get out of the line. It'll show up on a line. All these will have that little handle in the middle, and it'll have all these dots around them. The little handle in the middle, when you hover over it, you see my cursor changes. I can hold the left mouse button down and reposition that rectangle. Same with the circle. You can double click that, grab the middle handle, and we can move it. Same with the line, any shape or groups of shapes. Now I can move the line around once I get over that, or I can grab all three of these and click that, and now I've got the little handle right there, and I can move them all as a group. But what are all these other handles for? Well, let's talk about the 8 white handles that you see. There's 4 on each corner and 4 on each quadrant, or 1 on each quadrant, 1 on each corner, and they're white. These handles enable us to change the shape, like drag the shape out and stretch it. For example, I'm going to hover over this one, and you see my cursor turns into that cross mouse. That means I can now grab that little handle, and I'm holding my left mouse button down, and now I can stretch that out. And what it's doing while I'm stretching it, it has anchored itself to that point. So it stretches from that point. I'm going to hit Control Z. If I grab this corner here, it will stretch from this point. But it's going to stretch in X and Y and hold the circle ratio, meaning it'll stay around. But you notice it is stretching out the circle here. If I do it on the bottom, it'll stretch the circle out right here, just like that. So, and it's always anchoring from the opposite side. Now, if I hold the Shift button down while I am stretched out, or if I hold the Shift button down while I'm hovering over one of these handles, it will now not use the opposite side as an anchor point, it'll use the middle as an anchor point. So that means it'll stretch from both sides from the anchor point. So I'm holding the Shift button down, and you can see it stretching both sides that way. The same thing will happen up and down, just like that. If I grab this line, it'll do the same thing. I'm not holding the Shift button down, and now I'm stretching the line like that. Now I'm going to hold the Shift button down, and now it is stretching based on the middle. So it's anchoring on the middle with the Shift button. Without the Shift button, it is, oops.
Another 7 or so minutes, and you've learned text and how to center things up.
One more thing I want to
show you. Now I'm going to show you
about
how
this.
to create the rectangle around the word Smiths.
The Shift button will work the same with these
top of this rectangle. Then we'll get into the star shape.
Handles too, to stretch the project out. The final thing is this green button around the outside. It actually looks blue to me. This enables you to rotate the project or the selected item or items. As I am hovering over that, you see that little round. As I hover over that bead, any one of these beads, you see my cursor turns into this round thing. That means I can now hold down my left mouse button down and rotate this however I want. And I can just stop wherever I want and let the mouse button go. I'm going to hit Control Z. And I am going to do this one more time. I'm over that one. I'm holding the left mouse button down. Now I want to get it exactly at 90 degrees. Well, while I'm holding it, I hit 90 and enter, and that will rotate that. We can do the same thing with everything all at one time. When I select it all, and then select it again, we have those beads, and now we can rotate the entire batch at one time. So I just want to make sure you understand about these beads because you will use them a lot. Now you'll see this donut here. I'm not going to explain that here. I've got a video that goes into rotate all the way through, so we won't worry about that donut right now. But what we need to do is resize this shape a little bit, make it a little bit smaller, and we're going to use those features to do that. So I want to make it narrower from the top and bottom. So we're going to double click that, and then I'm going to hold my Shift button down while I'm hovering over this bottom bead, this bottom handle, and simply squeeze it down a little bit to get it to where I want it to be. Then I'll click off to the side, and Smiths looks a little centered up on this quite nicely, so I don't really need to adjust it. But if I needed to adjust it up and down, I would select it and nudge it around. Now we're missing a star. So let's go get the star. You come under Create Vectors, select your star, and one thing I want you to do right away is change this number this percentage number to 33. It's going to come in at 50 just like that. And your star is going to look just like that, a little goofy. I'm going to Control Z that. We're going to change that to 33 and it's going to look like a normal star. And look at my cursor, I've got a star over my cursor. Again, hover over that vertical line and hold your left mouse button down and stretch out that star to the size that you want it. We'll go right there, hit the escape button to get out of star mode, and then I'm going to nudge that down just a little bit with my arrow keys. And I want to nudge welcome up just a little bit. So I select that and go up. We got to remember, we have to save our project, something we have to do on a regular basis. So come up and hit the save button, and that project is now ready for Toolpaths.
Well, my friend, you should feel pretty good if you've been following along with me. You have not only an understanding of many of the tools in the Vectric software that you will use to design your projects. If you've been following me, you've got a full-blown project design. You should pat yourself on the back for that. Now we have to get into the Toolpath stuff. You know, set the machine up or set the software up so it will carve out your project the right way. This next section will go fairly quickly as well. We've been at this for about an hour and maybe another 20-25 minutes to go. Hour and a half, and you're getting everything you need to get started with the Vectric software. If that hasn't earned me a thumbs up, then please take a minute and do that now. In fact, what I would hope that you would do, if you will please, in the comments, just let me know if this is the most thorough Vectric YouTube video that you have come across on YouTube. Let me know that, because I do want to know. I want to know if I'm creating content for you, or put your questions down on things that you want to know. This has taken quite a long time to create this video, about a good solid week for me, 8 hours a day. So a lot of effort put into it to make it look good and work good and understandable. So I'd hope that you would give me a comment or a thumbs up at least, even subscribe, because I do teach you about all this stuff like this software, of course, CNC machines, and of course CNC router bits. IDC Woodcraft is a CNC router bit supply company for creators like you to carve out your amazing CNC projects, and it's my livelihood. We've got a full line of CNC router bits that you can get to do virtually anything you can do on a CNC router. If you haven't got sets for your CNC router yet, you always need a good starter set. And that's one of the things that I take a lot of pride in providing to you as a brand new creator, is the only truly complete CNC router bit starter set. This is a 12-piece set. No one else offers a set like this, and it enables you to do virtually any design that you can come up with. Of course, you'll need other CNC router bits in the future, but this one is the one that will really get you started. I give you some free projects with it, with instructions, and sometimes the G-code files. And I've got a ton of other resources available to you as well. So if you haven't got a starter set, this is the one I think you should probably consider, because it has a ton of resources with it. So I will link that down below, along with other stuff I've talked about, like the video list that you should definitely get. The video list is completely organized so you can just find what you're looking for and go to that video to learn that. So with that, it is time to get into the toolpaths. First thing we're going to do is switch over to the Toolpath menu. Then I'm going to cover the real estate that's on there that isn't on the design side of the menu or the screen. And then we're going to get into actually creating the toolpaths, the things that you have to do to tell the CNC router how to move around to carve out this welcome sign. With that, let's get rocking and rolling into Toolpath. IDCwoodcraft.com.
Well, my friend, we're in the final stretch where you're going to take this project right here that you just finished designing and generate it to look like this in your design software. So the three toolpaths we are going to use are called Pocket or Pocketing, Profile, Profiling, and Vcarve.
And here's what each of these toolpaths are. We have the outside profile where we're doing the cutout of the project. That is actually profiling, when we're actually following the profile of a line. The pocket cut is everything that gets recessed so that we get the star popping out, welcome popping out, and the big word Smiths popping out with that rectangle. And the third toolpath, the one I love the most, is V-carving. And that is this section right here where we will tilt this down and you can see that these are done in kind of a V-shaped wedge type of thing. That's where a V-bit comes in. And this is the part of the project that you can personalize for yourself. Now, if you have Cut2D, you cannot do V-carving. It is not in that version of the software. And you'll have to find a pocketing font that you can do, put in here and actually pocket this out. And that's the three toolpaths we're going to be using and what you use most of all. Now I'm going to get back in the software and I am going to show you how to get over to Toolpaths, tell you about some of the different real estate in there, and then we're going to start creating the toolpaths.
So there's a couple ways to get over to the toolpath menu. The first one is by going up to this little arrow right here. When you click this arrow, what it's going to do, it's going to close out the design window, this whole menu on the right side, on the left side, and it's going to open up the toolpath menu on the right side. So I'm going to click that button now, which says switch to toolpath commands, and I click that and the design menu goes away, and you see over to the right this toolpath menu opens up and it says toolpaths at the top. Now we can go back to the design menu by hitting the corresponding arrow right here. And when I hover over it, it says switch to design commands. When I select that button, it will turn off the toolpath commands and go back into the design commands. So that's one way to do it, but I don't particularly like going that way because you use a shortcut key. F11 and F12 will toggle you between the two. So if you hit F12, it will take you from the design menu or any menu on this side, and it'll turn it off and turn on the toolpath menu, just like that. F11 will switch you back. So I'm going to hit F11 and it switched me back. Now, one of the things you notice is that we have the little tab up here too for toolpaths. You can hover over that and bring that out, and that will pop that menu out temporarily and bring it back. Some people like to have the toolpath menu open on one side and the design menu open on the other. Me, I prefer to work on the design menu and then go over the toolpath and just do one thing at a time and not clutter up my screen. So I have as much real estate right here as I possibly can to do my design work. Hit F12. We're in Toolpath. Now I'm going to explain the general layout of the things that are new here that weren't in the design menu. First of all, of course, you have the Toolpath menu over to the right. You can see all the way over to the left, you still have tabs that say design, components, layers, and whatnot. So we're not going to mess with that, but if you hover over them, the menu will open up just like that, and it gives you an opportunity to do a quick fix while you're doing something in the Toolpath menu. Now, this is where the 3D menu also comes into play. We still have those tabs that just moved over. And you can switch over to the 3D design, and now you're going to see your project sitting here over a piece of wood, just the design elements. So we'll come back to that. We're just going to leave this one turned on, the 3D view, for now, and talk to you a little bit about what you see. All these other elements at the top are still the same thing. Now what we have here is what we go from I think it's a panoramic view, or not panoramic, isometric view to a straight on view. It'll default to the isometric view, and I'll just leave that alone. And then you've got some zoom windows right here. Now what these zoom windows do, let's see, you click the first one and it'll open up a microscope with a little plus in it, and that means that you can just create a window around something and it'll zoom into that window. The middle one will zoom out to the entire project, and the final one will zoom into the selected item. So we're going to select the word Smiths and click that last one to the right, and it'll just zoom in to Smiths automatically. But we're just going to look at the whole thing. Now, you notice this little toggle box right here that says top, and it's got some triangles on it. This enables you to flip around this project. So I'm going to hover my mouse right over the top of this, and I am going to hold my left mouse button down and start to turn it. And this enables you to flip this thing around. And you notice on that little cube, it now says left, front, top. what you can do is also click on one of these areas that highlights, and it will reorient in that orientation. So we can click to the front and you'll get the front. We can scroll it down a little bit and then click the top and you'll get to the top. The other way you can roll it around is by holding down your right mouse button, which is my habit. But you can get used to using that. Now let's talk about all these icons here. First of all the brown icons are toolpath operations. These are where you actually tell the software that you're going to carve something. The three that we are going to use is this one, Profile, this one, Pocketing, and this one, Vcarve. We're not going to worry about the rest. I'm not going to dive into them at all. Down here are management icons. One that you will use quite a bit is this one right here. This is the database. This is where all the router bit information is stored in the software. You need this to tell the machine or tell the software what router bits are going to be used and what the settings for the router bits are. Feeds, speeds, depths of cut. The next one you need to know is this button right here. If you make a change to a toolpath, you can simply hit this recalculate button, or if you change the size of something in the project. For example, if we upsize the word welcome, then we would hit that button instead of going into the toolpath. The next thing that you will need to know quite a bit is this one right here, the one with the little YouTube movie icon on it. It says Preview Toolpaths. This is where you can actually see what the machine is going to do. Now, the last one you're going to need to know is this one right here. This is a save toolpath. We will get into this after we generate the toolpaths.
That's it with the difference between the toolpath menu and the design menu as far as real estate goes. Now we get into the fun stuff, which is doing the toolpathing for this welcome sign.
IDC Woodcraft CNC router bits would like to introduce to you the new Ultra Smooth Cutting Series surfacing bits for your CNC router. A completely new design in surfacing bits to take your CNC projects to the next level. When it comes to surfacing your spoil board or flattening slabs, and most importantly, preparing those amazing projects you're going to be carving on your CNC router, surface smoothness and flatness are the most important. So IDC Woodcraft has taken the traditional surfacing bit and modified it. Number one, the forward cutting angle has been changed so you can get much higher feed rates. Number two, we modified the grind angle so there's much less wear on your bit, extending the life of it. And three, and most important, we've taken the traditional 3-flute surfacing bit and added a 4th flute for a superior finish. Take your CNC projects to the next level with the IDC Woodcraft Ultra Smooth Cutting Series surfacing bits, because your CNC projects absolutely must look amazing. The IDC Woodcraft Ultra Smooth Cutting Series surfacing bits, only at idcwoodcraft.com. All right, let's start with our first toolpath, which is going to be cutting out the material inside the inner border, inside the border where the star is raised up, the border is raised up, the word welcome is raised up, and the box around Smiths is raised up. That is the pocketing toolpath. So switch back over to yours, and to do it pocketing toolpath, first of all, we're going to deselect everything that's on here. We got something selected on here. So I'm just going to get off of that screen, any lines, and just click my left mouse button, and that will deselect. In order to get this carve started, you want to come up to this icon right here. This is pocketing toolpath, and this is what's going to carve out the inside of the project. So the star pops, the word welcome pops, and the Smiths pops, and you get the boundary. I want you to select that button, and this is the menu that's going to open up. Now the first thing you want to do is select the items that the software is going to reference for the carving. So we're going to zoom in just a little bit, and we are going to select the boundary, the star, the word welcome, and the rectangle around Smiths. And remember, we're going to select them all at once, so I'm going to hover in between the outer boundary and the inner boundary, and I'm going to hold my left mouse button down and simply touch all those elements, and now those are selected. Now the software will know that it's going to use those boundaries or those vectors, closed vectors, as its reference for this pocket carve. So now we set all our parameters. The first thing you want to do is set your start depth. For this project, you want your start depth to be 0. What that means is we are starting at the very top of the material. And then the depth of cut. Now this is going to be an 1/8 of an inch depth of cut. So we need to type in 0.125. The next field where it says tools, this is important to get the right router bit or right router bits in here. Right now, all we want to do is populate one router bit. We are going to be using this specific bit right here, the end mill 1/4 inch down cut. But let's just pretend that you've worked with the software, there's nothing there, and you need to populate it, or you have other router bits in there. First of all, if there are router bits in there, simply select the top one, click remove, and keep clicking remove until the box clears out. Then come to the select button. That's going to open up the CNC router bit database in your Vectric software. And that's where all your router bit information is stored and all the different types of router bits. Now, the database is important, and you should have a fully populated database. I have a database available for you that you can download and install into your Vectric software. It is every CNC router bit in the IDC Woodcraft database. I will link information about that down below in the description, and you can go take a look at that in a little while. Right now we need to select the router bit. So first of all, you notice in the database there's nothing here, this big blank field. We're going to select the 1/4 inch downcut end mill. And when I click over that, it's going to highlight like my bits, but it's also going to populate a bunch of information in this big white space. So I'm going to click it now, and you're going to see all this information pop up. This is the information for your router bit, so when the software writes the program to run your CNC router, it is going to use this information here. Click select, and you'll notice now that the 1/4 inch end mill is now populated in the tools box. That's what we want. We're going to ignore the edit button and the edit passes button. Down here where it says offset and raster, we're going to leave the default of offset, and down below that, whatever you have selected, climber, conventional, ignore that as well. This ramp checkbox should be unchecked for now, and these two checkboxes, they don't matter if they're checked, but I would suggest that you uncheck them for the sake of this video. You'll see down below that is a name field, and you can edit that name. So that's where you can change the name for the toolpath that you're running. For example, this is a pocket, and the toolpath defaulted to name pocket 1. And we will leave it at that. We'll just come down and click calculate. When we do, you're going to see down at the bottom here, there's this word toolpaths, and then down here it says pocket 1. That is the name that was in the name field of the toolpath that we did. So what this just did is create this toolpath right here. And you'll notice in the picture, there are a bunch of lines. There's a bunch of squiggly blue lines and some red lines. So we're going to just explain to you what this is so you understand this. The blue lines are the actual path that the router bit is going to take while it's carving. The red lines are rapid motions for the router bit. In other words, when the router bit needs to move to a position to dive into the material to start cutting it, it's going to go as fast as it can. And that's what the red line is. Once it gets into the material and it starts to carve at the router bit settings, that's what the blue lines are. So the blue lines are the actual carve lines. The red lines are the move rapid lines. And you can see the red lines are actually above the material. So that's where the router bit pulls out, moves somewhere really fast, dives in, and that's what these inbound lines are. That's the plunge lines, and then it does the carving. So you have that now. Now we need to take a look at this to see what it actually looks like. When we did the calculation, The menu is going to change, and it's going to change to this preview toolpaths. And there's going to be a bunch of information here, and it looks a lot more complicated. There's so many buttons here that we actually don't use. But the first setting I want you to set is this machined area color. When this carves out, it's going to carve out and it's going to look like wood. I like to see the stark contrast. So this is the one that I have as a example, and you see I have the orange color. That's what I want to see. It just gives me more clarity. So what you want to do is come down and click this button right here. It says Global Fill Color. Select that, and you're going to see this little color box here, and you can select whatever color you want by selecting this down arrow button. That's going to open up the color palette. Choose a color that you want. Maybe you want to go natural. That's what that would be. The rest of the information down here, don't worry about if these are checked or unchecked. Just leave them alone. Down here, in these buttons here are all how you actually view the toolpaths. The only two buttons you want to worry about is this one right here, Reset Preview, and this one is Preview All Toolpaths. The rest we're not going to worry about. What we want to do is actually watch this toolpath. So in order to see what is actually being done, you want to click the Preview All Toolpaths. And what that will do is that will generate the toolpath, or give you a rendering of what it will look like after it carves of all the toolpaths you've created down below. Right now we only have one. So I am going to click the Preview Toolpaths button, and you're going to see this carve out very quickly. And there it is. There is your initial carve, and you can see it's orange. That's exactly what we want. Now you're going to see a little bit of an issue right here. We've got this C that is touching the O, and the O is touching the M, and that doesn't look very good. So we're going to have to do a little bit of a correction on this. But overall, you should feel really good that you just got to this point, and you see what you're looking at, all this work you just did. You now have part of a carve, and that's got to feel really good. Now, if you want to reset this to the plain piece of material, you will come back and click this button, Reset Preview. When I do that, it'll go back to a piece of wood. I'm going to click it now, and that's exactly what it looks like. So now let's click the Preview All Toolpaths button again, and we want to take a look at this C, O, and M. Now this is something you may run into every once in a while. At the end of the video, we will fix this. It's a very easy fix, so we'll come back to this. Right now, we want to get out of the Preview Toolpaths menu by clicking the Close button. The next thing we want to do is Vcarve the word Smith. So you want to come up to this icon right here where it says Vcarve Engraving Toolpath and select that. Now again, the first thing you want to do is select the vectors that you want it to carve around. So in this case it's the word Smith, so we're simply going to select that, and everything else needs to be deselected. Again, we're going to come up to the start depth. The Vcarve is going to start at the top of the material, so the start depth needs to be 0. If this is checked, I want you to uncheck it. When you come down below, we have these two buttons, Select and Edit. We are not going to mess with the Edit button, but you do need to select the router bit. Now it's going to tell you what router bit you are going to be using right here. We want to use the 90-degree ultra smooth cutting V-bit, or just a 90-degree V-bit. So we're going to click the select button, open up the router bit database again, and we're going to see the V-bits in here, and I'm going to select the 90-degree V-bit with a 1/4 inch shaft right there, that guy. Select it. We'll have all the data for that bit populated in here, and you're going to see this little symbol there that says you got the V-bit selected, and come down and click select. And now you can see up here we have the 90-degree V-bit. If we have this use clearance tools, and if you have anything in here, I want you to uncheck this. This box needs to be unchecked, so it'll look like that. And you don't want to worry about anything else. Down below you'll have these two check boxes. It doesn't really matter if they're checked or unchecked, but we will uncheck them both. Now we'll keep use vector selection order. You can keep that one checked. And again, this one down here, project toolpath to 3D. We it doesn't matter, it can be checked or unchecked. Again, you can edit the name of the project right there, and we're just going to rename it just so you see how this works. I'm going to call it Smith, and click Calculate. And that Vcarve is going to calculate. Now the first thing you're going to see is this second toolpath created right there, and it's called Smith. And now I know that that toolpath has to do with the word Smith. And you're also going to see the blue lines carving the word Smith and the red lines. And you're going to see those plunge lines, those green, blue, cyan plunge lines that are in there. That's showing us what it's going to do, and now we can preview all toolpaths again. Let's just rotate this just a little bit more. Preview all toolpaths, and there's Smiths. So now we have 2 of the 3 toolpaths done. It's this quick. So now all we have to do is profile out the sign, actually cut it out. So we're going to come over and close the Preview Toolpaths menu. Now that Preview Toolpaths menu will always open up as soon as you calculate a toolpath. So now it's finally the outer boundary to do the cutout. Then that's the profile toolpath. So you're going to come over to this first icon right here. When you hover over it, it says Profile Toolpath. Select that. Again, the first thing you do is select the vectors that you want it to cut on. So we're going to select the outer boundary and come back up and click Start Depth. Now, the next thing we want to do is set up the cut depth. The material is 0.75, but we have a 0.5 in here. We want this to cut all the way through the project. So you type in the thickness of the project, 0.75. If this Show Advanced Toolpaths is checked, uncheck that for now. Now we have to select the router bit. Again, we're going to ignore this edit button. We just want to come in and select the bit. We're going to do this with a 1/4" end mill, the same one we chose before, but we have the 1/8" down cut in here, so we have to change that. We're going to select, go over to the 1/4" down cut end mill, select it, and then click Select Button. And that router bit is now selected. Now here's the important part. We're doing a cutout, and we want the router bit to actually cut out around the outside of this boundary. I'm going to reorient the project a little bit by clicking the top toggle. And we want the router bit to carve so it doesn't come on this side of this line. We want the router bit to carve along this line, and it is round like that, and it's just following the line. It's not crossing over the line. So when you look at this machine vectors, you see these 3 buttons. There's outside right, inside left, and on. And if you look at the little image next to it, there is a little router bit on it, and that box is the vector itself. So what this is set on right now is the word on. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to center the router bit right on that line. And that means that part of the router bit is going to be outside the line and part of it is going to be inside the line. In other words, we are going to be cutting inside of what we want to cut. So we need to change this to outside. And you're going to see this little picture change when I click that. Now we know the router bit is going to carve around the outside of the boundary. That's exactly what we want. Doesn't matter if you have climb or conventional set right now. Do not check the ramp button here, and we're not going to check the add tabs button. We are going to come down to this name field. Now it says profile 1. I like to call this cutout because it's cutting out the project, and simply click calculate. And now when we look at the image, we see the blue line all the way around. There's that red line that's coming across here, and then the router bit is actually making its moves all the way around. Now when you rotate it, you can see there are 3 stacks of blue lines. That means the router bit is going to, let's turn that just a little bit so we get a better view on that. Let's just turn that off for a second. There we go. You get the 3 blue lines there. That means the router bit is going to make 3 passes around. It's going to come in to a certain depth, go around, move down, cut again, and then go around, and then it's going to go to the final depth and make a final pass through. Now the way I actually just made this, the material go away, is this little box right here. I simply selected that and turned that off. Now You'll also notice that we have the cutout toolpath. So now we have 3 toolpaths here. So let's check this out. I'm going to come in and click Preview All Toolpaths, and you're going to see the cutout, and now we have our project. Now the way you get rid of this waste material is simply to double click on it, and it will go away. So I'm hovering my mouse over it. I'm going to double click my left mouse button twice, and there it goes. And there is your project, with the exception of welcome.
Not bad. You've got all the toolpaths set up for this project now. That is super, super cool. Now, we've got a few more things we have to do with this thing, so we're still going to be hanging out a little bit longer. Number one is we have to fix this problem with the O and the M and the C, where they're attached to each other. It's an easy fix and something you're going to need to know about. Number two is I need to show you how to add tabs. This video would not be complete if we're doing a project cutout and we don't add tabs, and you'll understand what that is in a little bit. The last thing I have to show you is how to save the G-code that you will plug into your CNC router to make the router do what it's supposed to do to make this welcome sign. So we still have a little ways to go on this, but I hope that you are getting all this information and it's just like, yes, everything's right here. So let's get into fixing the C and the M and the O first, and then we'll get to the tabs, and then we'll get to saving the toolpaths, and then you and I will part ways. IDCWoodcraft.com.
First of all, we need to save the project. We've done a lot of work. So again, hit Control S, and that will save the project. So now let's go fix this word welcome. So we don't have this. It actually looks like it actually is cut through, and you're going to learn a little important trick here that you actually do need to know about. First thing we want to do is get out of this menu, Preview Toolpaths, click the button Close, and now we're going to come up to the button at the upper right, that little arrow that says Switch to Design Commands. Select that, and now we're back into design. We want to go to 2D view. So the little tab up on top, and now we have the word welcome. Our problem is the C and the O are too close, and the M are too close to each other. So how do we fix that? It's actually a pretty easy fix. We're going to select that word, and then come back into the draw text function. Don't worry about anything in the draw text menu. You're simply going to come over to the letter, and you're going to notice that my cursor is changing. As I move between letters, it just does different things, but it's got this kind of weird cursor right now. When we look at it, there's this plus sign, which is the center of the cursor, and above it, it has a V and an A, I believe, and it's got 2 little arrows that point inward. When I click my left mouse button, that's going to nudge the letters together, but it's going to nudge the letters that it is sitting between. So the C and the O, when I click my left mouse button, the C and the O will nudge together. I'm going to click it now, and you see that they move together. And I can do that multiple times, but I want them to move apart. So we're going to hit and hold the Shift button down, and you'll notice that the little arrows switch as I'm touching the Shift button and untouching it. That's a little menu popped up because I hit it too many times. So when I hit the Shift button down, those arrows are pointing outward, which means it is going to start nudging it outward. So I click my left mouse button several times until I get more space between there. Now we're going to come over to the M and the O, and then we're going to do the same thing. Just click it a couple of times and simply click Close on the menu. Now we'll switch back over to Toolpath by hitting F12. And we want to change back to the 3D view. And you're going to notice now that what is in the carve part of the rendering and the actual letter is in a different position. That's because the rendering is still based on the original carve we just did, but we just moved the vectors. That means we have to recalculate this. So that's what this little button does. It recalculates everything that we're doing. When you select that, the software will recalculate all toolpaths, just like that, and it's going to give you a little menu here that says we've recalculated all the toolpaths. Click OK, and now you need to go back into Preview Toolpaths, the little movie button here. We want to reset all the toolpaths, but let's first get this guide so we can see it. We're going to reset it and then re-preview all toolpaths. And now the O and the M have been fixed. And this is the finished project. Now I'm going to double click that material again. There it is.
It's really that easy to adjust the text spacing. Pretty cool. Make sure you practice that a little bit to get a good feel for how to space your letters out. And also, just a little extra tip, you can take that same cursor and move it in between lines and do the same thing, and it'll make your lines go further apart or closer together. So you can adjust things in multiple ways. Definitely practice that. The next thing we're going to get on is to doing tabs. Tabs are little pieces of wood that attach your finished project to the waste material. You'll want to do that because if you're cutting something out, you don't want it to move at the last minute. So tabs are really important, and then we're going to get onto the final thing, which is toolpaths. So we have another 20-25 minutes to go. Now we've spent a lot of time together so far. Again, I hope you're getting some value out of this video. Please like the video, comment, and subscribe, because this is how I educate you. One other thing I want to share with you. If you decide to get the Vectric software, for example, if you're using the trial version or you're just exploring the design software to make your CNC router projects, I have a link down below in the description. It is an affiliate link for the Vectric software. And what that means is when you click that and go get the Vectric software, then that will credit me on that, and I'll get a little bit of pocket change, enough to buy a burger and a beer for my girlfriend. With that, let's get into the important thing, doing tabs for cutouts.
IDCWoodcraft.com. Now it's time to add tabs to your project. What are tabs? Why are they important? And how do we add them? Well, it's really easy to add them, but first I want to explain to you what tabs are. We're going to go over to the other project that I've been mirroring along with you. And you notice on this particular cutout, there are 4 orange tabs, one on each side and one on the top and one on the bottom. What that is that is material that is actually left over from the cutout. We actually don't cut that out. The router bit will move along, and when it reaches this point, it'll raise up and then cut some more and go back down to get through the material. Now, the reason for tabs is when you're doing a cutout, the project piece can move in the pocket. And if it does that, then it will move against the router bit and the router bit will cut into it and thereby causing damage to your project. Or it can break the router bit, or worse, it can actually kick the project out. So we want to have tabs. The thing with tabs is they keep the project piece attached to the waste material. So in order to get rid of them, you have to take the whole thing off and manually cut away the tabs. I want to show you the toolpath that is created so that you understand how the router bit runs around. We're going to rotate this around. I'm going to turn on the visibility of the toolpath, which is by simply checking the checkbox in next to the toolpath. So we check that, and now we have the blue lines that shows the path of the router bit. Now we're going to turn the material off, and again we turn it off by clicking this little brown cube in the upper left corner, and what we're left with is the toolpath. And now you can see on this toolpath there are 4 areas that appear to be uncut. This is the actual tab. So what the router bit will do, it will come across, and when it reaches that tab, it will lift up and over that tab and continue on. Therefore, leaving material that secures your project piece to the waste material. So that's why we want to have tabs, and that's exactly what it does. Now let's show you how to add them to your project. Very easy to do. What you want to do is come into the toolpath that actually cuts out the profile of the project. So that would be this cutout toolpath. Now we want to double click that toolpath, and that will open that toolpath back up. You'll notice towards the bottom there is this checkbox that says add tabs to toolpath, and there is a graphic below it and some numbers there and they're grayed out. We can't edit that because this checkbox is not checked. So what I want you to do is click that checkbox and you'll see that the graphics come to full color. Now the length of the tab is editable and the thickness of the tab is editable. I like to have large tabs when I'm doing large projects like this. So in this case, in this size project, you want to make the length of your tab 0.5 and the thickness 0.375. Then we click Edit Tabs, and this is where we can tell it where we want to put the tabs and how many we want. So click Edit Tabs, and your screen will default back to the 2D view, and this new Toolpath Tabs menu will open up. You will have this first radio button selected. I never use these other radio buttons here, but so this is the one you want to use, and you will default to the number 2. So what that number 2 means is how many tabs it's going to add to the project. You don't worry about these 2 little radio buttons here. All we want to do is click Add Tabs. Now when I click Add Tabs, we're going to see a couple little things show up. I'm going to click Add Tabs now, and you're going to see there's this little box with a T on the left and one on the right. And you're also going to notice that my cursor also has this little icon above it, and that's the tabs icon. And the plus sign, of course, is the pick point. So what the Vectric will do, it will pick 2 random points to add the tabs. So we can now edit the number of tabs, and we can also tell it where we want them. So first of all, we want to have more tabs. We want to have at least 4 tabs on this project, maybe 5. So what we want to do is come up to the number, and I'm going to change that to 5. So you can either click this arrow button, or you can actually just edit the text box and type in your number. And then you want to click Add Tabs. Now I want you to watch the design screen. You're going to see more tabs appear, and there we go. Now they're put at random places. The good thing is we can edit where we want these tabs put at. The reason we want to edit it is because it may put tabs where we don't want it. For example, it may put a tab inside this little radius, which would make it very difficult to cut out, or it puts it on this rounded area that can also be a little difficult to cut out. So we can simply move the tabs around by hovering your mouse over the tab, and you'll see that this little X in parentheses shows up. Hold your left mouse button down and drag it around. And then when you let your left mouse button go, it will drop the tab. You can see as I'm doing that, there's this little orange box or whatever that is that's being drug around that line. Basically, it's telling me this is a shadow that I am moving, and when I move it to here, which is what I'm going to do, and let go, this tab will disappear and it will reappear right here. And there it is. So we're going to switch this tab as well, and just drag it over, and then this tab I'm going to put on the side, and this tab I will put on the bottom right in the middle. I actually want to put that one down a little bit lower to give a good balance security of this project. So we're going to move that around. Now we can add tabs easily as well. Let's say I want to put a tab at the very top of the project. You can just hover over here and click your left mouse button. You see a little checkbox that's showing up. That's saying we can add a tab. So when you hover right there and click, now we have added a tab. Let's say we don't want a tab. We want to eliminate a tab. You can also hover over it and you'll see the little X show up. You can click your left mouse button once again, and there it is. So we're done adding tabs. All you have to do is come over and click the close button, and when we close, we have the tabs showing up. Now you're going to see this little green mark. You might need to see this somewhere around there. That is not a tab. That is actually the start point of the router bit. That's where it's going to come in and start doing its cut. So now with that, we're going to simply click the calculate button. Software is going to calculate, and you're going to notice now we're going to rotate up, and I am going to turn the material off by clicking the little box up in the left corner, and now you see your toolpath has these 5 tabs that we have just added. So I'm going to turn the material back on, and we're going to reset the preview. Well, first of all, let's reorient the project by moving that toggle box and clicking it to top, reset the preview, then preview all toolpaths, and now you're going to see that we have the tabs on the project. Now, one thing, when we have material attached to the waste material, the tabs, we can no longer eliminate the waste material. If I try to double click on the waste material now, we're going to get this little warning sign that comes up that says, hey, I can't do that. So that's one of the things that you have to take into account. So we're going to click OK. And now we want to simply click Control S to save our project again. And tabs are all set.
And that's it with creating tabs on your project for your cutouts. Now, there is a little tip I want to give you when it comes to creating tabs, and that is wait until you are completely done with the project before adding tabs. In other words, just before you're at the point of saving toolpaths. Here's what I mean and why I suggest this. When you're designing your cutouts and what have you, we like to click away that waste material so we can see what the finished project looks like. And you know now that if the tabs are attached to the waste material, you can't click it away. So when you are completely done and ready to save toolpaths, then you add the tabs, then you save the toolpaths. And that is exactly what we're going to do next. And it's the last step that you need to do before you can actually get that project out on your CNC router. Saving toolpaths is basically turning your design and all of the router bit toolpaths that you created into something called G-code. G-code is the language that your CNC router understands that tells it what to do. When you're going to create these files, you actually are done with the Vectric software. Then you have to take those files and plug it into your CNC router control software, and that's how you can run the machine to make it move around. Now, I want to give you a little tip about the Vectric software. If you are using the free trial version of the software, either in Cut2D, Vcarve, or Aspire, this is one thing that you cannot do with the software, is actually write the G-code. That's the stopping point of the free trial. You can do all the design work that you want, but you can't create the G-code. So if you want to actually create the G-code, you have to buy the software. And if you decide to go with the paid version of the software, again, I will remind you, please use the link down below in the description. Gives me enough to buy a burger and a beer for creating content like this for you. That would be very helpful. So now we go into creating toolpaths. This is it. You and I have been hanging around for a long time. Make sure you hang around after we talk about toolpaths, because I do want to wrap this up for you. So just stick around. Toolpath section won't be that long at all. Because you've been hanging around this long, it just tells me that you are absolutely serious about learning the software so you can create really good projects on your CNC router. And because you've invested all this time, and you and me were kind of like buddies, I want to give you a special bonus that is only available here from this video way towards the end of the video. And that very special bonus that I'm giving to you is a 15% discount across the board at idcwoodcraft.com. So you can get all the CNC router bits that you want at a pretty steep discount, 15%. And the way that you do this to get that discount is you use the discount code that is displayed on the screen right now exactly as it is. When you go to your checkout, plug in this discount code, and then you will get your 15% discount at idcwoodcraft.com. Now, here's the caveat. This is a one-time use discount code. So if you forget about this later on, and then you send me an email, I'm not giving this code out. So if you want to get some bits, I suggest you write down this code, write down a list of the bits that you want, and then go to the idcwoodcraft.com website and get your CNC router bits, or just go there right now. And here's why I'm saying this. It's one-time use and we forget. And I'm not going to share this anywhere else. So use this discount code, take advantage of it now before you forget. All right, let's wrap this thing up with generating the G code so that you can plug that code into your CNC router and make your welcome sign. IDCwoodcraft.com. When we left off, we had just finished putting the tabs in the project.
and that has left us in the Preview Toolpaths menu. So we need to exit out of that and get to the main Toolpaths menu. To do that, select the Close button, and that brings you back to the main Toolpaths menu. To save the toolpaths, you need to go to this icon right here. When you hover over it, it says Save Toolpaths. Select that button. You will go into the Save Toolpaths menu. So we're going to do two things before we actually save the toolpath. Actually, we're going to have to do three things. The first is we have to tell it what toolpaths we wanted to write the G-code for. The second is we have to select the toolpaths that the G-code is going to be written for. And third, we have to make sure the post processor is set. Then we'll be able to save the toolpath. So here's how we do that. First is, you see at the top there are 3 radio button selections. Now if you've not generated any toolpath yet, then you will probably be selected on this Selected Toolpath radio button. I want you to select the third one where it says Visible Toolpaths to Multiple Files. What that will do is we will have all these toolpaths selected, and so it's going to write all the toolpaths at one time. So select that radio button just like that. Do not check group where possible. So we are going to uncheck that. Now you notice down here it says toolpaths to be saved, and there are no visible toolpaths. That's because we have to select the toolpaths. So we're going to come down to the bottom, and you notice these check boxes here. We can select each toolpath, and each one that's selected, it will start to write the code for when we tell it to write the code. But we want to do it for all of them. So the way to select all the toolpaths at one time is to click the little check box next to the word toolpaths. And you'll notice that all the toolpaths get lit up on the main drawing, and you'll also see some information starting to plug in right here. That is each one of the toolpaths. Now, don't worry about this field right here where it says machine. But what is important is the post processor. If we try to save toolpaths right now without a post processor set up, the software will not create the toolpath. And I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to select this button, Save Toolpaths. And we get this little warning that says no post processor selected.
Before I go on, I probably need to explain to you what a post processor is. We also use the term post. What a post processor is a set of instructions that your Vectric software uses when it's writing the G-code to tell it how to write the G-code. G-code is a set of instructions for your CNC router. And every CNC router has a different criteria to tell it what to do. So the post processor tells the software, okay, I need you to put this code in at this place, this code in at this place, and this code in at this place, and so on and so on. By doing that, your CNC router will know how to configure itself so that when it reads the G-code file, it will understand all that it needs to set up in its configuration to actually run your project. So the post processor is basically a simple file that just has some information in it that at the end of the day tells Vectric how to write the G-code. It is absolutely required for your CNC router.
So if you don't know what the post processor is for your machine, then you will need to go to your machine maker and ask them what post processor to use and if it is in the Vectric software. But I'm going to show you real quick how to find your post processor so you can actually create the code. Here it says select a post processor. When you click that, you'll probably only have this field in here where it says add post processor, but I have multiple ones selected. Here's how you go get your post processor for your machine. Click the button add post processors. What that's going to do is open up this menu here, and there's going to be a bunch of empty fields. We don't really need to worry about these fields. We need to go get your specific post. So what you need to do is go to this plus button right here. Select that, and that's going to open up the entire database of post processors that Vectric has in your software. And what you'll need to do after you know what your post processor is go find it. So I'm just going to select the GRBL post processor. That's works for most of the hobby CNC routers, but again, you got to make sure that your CNC company tells you exactly what post to use. So I'm going to select this one right here. It's GRBL inch. Click that and you click select. And what you'll see is it'll populate into this list right there. And you can click apply and click OK. Now when you come over to your select post processor field, you open that up and you will see your post processor will be in that field. So I'm going to select that, and now this field has populated with your post processor. Now all you have to do is click Save Toolpaths, and a directory is going to open up. And so we want to tell it exactly where it's going to first send these files. So we're going to go to that folder I created quite a while ago called CNC Designs. And then we're going to go to the Vectric 101 training project. And I am going to just create a new folder, and that folder is going to be called gcode. And hit enter, and I'm going to enter again to get into that. Now, what you want to do is name this file relative to the entire project. So this is a welcome sign, personalized, or however you will know what this file is. Once you have that, simply click save, and that directory will close and you'll come right back to the screen. What you need to do now is go into the directory, and we will go find that directory. There we go. Go into the 101 training project. You can see there's my directory called gcode. I'm going to click into it, and you're going to see 3 files here. Now we're going to expand this just a little bit. No, we don't need to. You notice that each one of them is named welcome sign personalized. There, there, and there. And then next to it has a number 1, a number 2, and a number 3. That is the order of the toolpaths in your Vectric software. So you notice that we have number 1, pocket 1, number 2, Smith, number 3, cutout. If we come down to the toolpath listing down here, pocket 1 is number 1, Smith is number 2, and cutout is number 3. So the Vectric software has listed it in that order with that number, and it has given the file name. Now, just to quickly show you what a G-code looks like, I'm going to double click into this first one, and then we'll expand that. And you can see that it has a bunch of information here. These are all the moves that your CNC router is going to make. So that is what a G-code file is. It is a text file that your CNC router can read. We're going to close that, and now all you have to do is take that file and load it into your CNC router.
And now, my friend, the only thing that's left for you to do is hit the Control and the S button, and the whole design aspect of your welcome sign is completely done, and everything has been created for the design side. The only thing that's left now is to set up your project material on your CNC router, load your G-code files in, and hit go and create your welcome sign. You've got to feel pretty good about this, especially being a beginner, that you have created this project, and you should pat yourself on the back for it. Now, there's a little bit more I do want to share with you, so don't end the video just yet. I do want to ask you though, if you haven't done it already and you feel like this video has given you value in understanding the Vectric software, then please take that minute to hit the thumbs up button. I would love to have a comment down below. Tell me if I did a good job for you in training you up with the Vectric software from an absolute beginner. Subscribe to the channel, and if this video has helped you out that much, then share the video. Because if you're trying to understand the Vectric software, then everybody else is too. Now, I do want to say there's a lot more to know about the software. You need to know about things like nodes. Nodes are very important, and there's lots of other tools to learn about the software. And that's why I recommend to people to take the Vectric course from Learn Your CNC that is put out by a guy named Kyle Ely. He is a Vectric master and the only full-blown course out there for the Vectric software. It takes you from the very beginning of either Cut2D, Vcarve, and Aspire, any one of those, and runs you all the way through it to the mastery level. At the end of the day, what your CNC router cuts depends on your skill in the software. And I want you to think about it this way, that you have invested several $1,000s in your CNC router, a tool that's going to last you for years. You've invested money in the Vectric software. You've bought router bits. You've set up your shop. You've taken the time to think about all this. At the end of the day, with all that money you've spent and the time you've spent, the CNC router is not going to do the work by itself. It's only going to work as well as you know how to design. The router will only do what you do in the design software. And the better your skill is, the better you're going to be. The important thing is to invest in your knowledge in how it all works, and it all starts with the software. So if you want to get really good at this, I'd strongly recommend that you take Kyle's course. That's how I learned about how to work with the Vectric software. And if you're not sure about it, then there is a free little training course that you can go to try out his course to see if it's something that would work for you. I will link that down below in the description, along with everything else that I have linked down below. I encourage you to go look at the description to make sure that you haven't missed anything, or some things that I recommended, like the starter set from IDC Woodcraft. And if you haven't bought the software for the Vectric, then go down. You can use the link down below. There's a lot more links and information down below in the description. Definitely go check that out. You and I have been hanging around for almost 2 hours. That's a long time for us to hang out, but I hope it was worth it for you, and your thumbs up and your comment and your subscription to this channel will tell me that it was worth your time. And with that, my friend, go design amazing projects, and I will catch you in the next video. IDCWoodcraft.com